Hey guys, I'm gonna do a video real quick. This one for UFC 287, and we're gonna dive on in. So let's get right into it. Starting off with Luana Pinheiro versus Michelle Waterson-Gomez. Luana is 8 years younger than Michelle with a 10-1 record and currently on an 8-fight winning streak. She's a finisher with a judo background from off of Dana White's Contender Series, and she's relatively new to the UFC with only 2 fights since getting here. But in those 2 fights that she's had, she's landed 7 out of 9 takedown attempts. I think she's going to look to take this fight to the ground just like she did in her last 2, and I feel like that's where she's going to have the advantage in this fight. And her opponent, Michelle Waterson-Gomez, is the number 10 ranked strawweight in the world, coming off of 2 losses. She's a former Invicta champion with a karate background and normally prefers to stay on the feet in her fights, but I think she's going to have a difficult time doing that against Luana Pinheiro, considering Pinheiro has a 78% takedown accuracy and finishes most of her fights. I think Luana's going to be able to get Michelle Waterson to the ground, and I think she's probably going to get a submission in this fight, so I'll be taking Luana Pinheiro. On to Chris Curtis versus Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum is ranked number 15 in the middleweight division, currently coming off of 2 losses, and he has lost his last 5 out of his last 6 fights, but against very tough opponents such as Jared Cannonier, Jack Hermanson, Robert Whitaker, Darren Till, Izzy Adesanya. He's well-rounded with a wrestling background and has the potential to get back on track with this fight, but his opponent, Chris Curtis, is going to be a tough fight for Kelvin Gastelum. And looking at Chris Curtis, he's got a record of 30-9 and is coming off of a win in his last fight. He's going to be an inch taller with a 4-inch reach advantage. Most of his finishes come by way of KO or TKO, and he's 4-1 inside of the UFC since coming here. And 3 of those wins come by KO. He's a very well-rounded fighter, and I think that Chris is going to have the edge just about everywhere in this fight. And I think I'll be taking Chris Curtis in this one. I mean, Kelvin Gastelum has had a really bad run of it as of late. And to be honest, I really don't think that 185 is his weight class. Even though he had trouble making the weight at 170, I think that he's just largely outsized at 185. And so for this fight, I'm going to be taking Chris Curtis. And now we'll be kicking off the main card with Raul Rosas Jr. against Christian Rodriguez. Rodriguez is an 8-1 finisher coming off of a win and seems pretty well-rounded with 3 TKO wins, 4 submission wins, and 1 decision win. This is the biggest spotlight he's had in his career, and he may have the advantage on the feet, but his opponent, Raul Rosas Jr., is a grappler with an undefeated record of 7-0, coming off of Dana White's Contender Series. He is the youngest fighter in UFC history and seems to have the ground advantage, with 5 of his wins coming by way of submission. Raul is also noticeably big for the weight class, and I think he's going to look to take this fight to the ground early in the fight and look to get a submission, and I think he's going to get it. So for this fight, I'm going to be taking Raul Rosas Jr. And now we've got Kevin Holland against Santiago Ponzinibbio. Santiago's a seasoned veteran with a record of 30-6. He's coming off of a win in his last fight with a knockout of the night victory over Alex Morono. He's very well rounded but prefers to stand, and he's got knockout power. But in this fight, I wouldn't be surprised to see him try to grapple Kevin Holland because his opponent will be 3 inches taller than him, and he'll also have an 8-inch reach advantage. Holland's also going to be 6 years younger than Santiago, but he's also lost his last 2 fights to some very good competition in Stephen Thompson and Khamzat Chimaev. Kevin is very well-rounded and unpredictable as to what he's going to do come fight night, but I think Kevin is going to be taking this one a bit more seriously than he has in his other fights, and I expect to see Kevin Holland perform very well this weekend. He's going to be bigger than Santiago, so I think we'll see him try to bully his opponent around more in this fight. I think Santiago's going to want to grapple with Holland considering the size advantage, but both of these guys are game for anything, and I can see them having a striking battle as well. But regardless of how this fight goes, I think Kevin Holland's going to win this fight. I think he's going to come into this one a lot more serious and locked in to win it, and I think I'm going to be taking Kevin Holland. Now we've got Rob Font against Adrian Yanez. Yanez is currently ranked number 12 in the bantamweight division. He's 16-3 on a 9-fight winning streak. He's won all 5 of his fights inside the UFC and has won a performance bonus on every fight that he's had since coming to the UFC. With 4 of those being knockout of the night bonuses and 1 of those being a fight of the night bonus, he's a well-rounded fighter but prefers to stand, and he's a finisher at heart. Now his opponent, Rob Font, is currently ranked number 6 in the bantamweight division. He's 6 years younger than Rob is. Rob will be 1 inch taller and have a 1.5-inch reach advantage. He's got a record of 19-6 and is coming off of 2 losses. He's got a strong chin, great cardio and footwork. He's very quick and quite well-rounded. This is without a doubt the biggest test of Adrian Yanez's career. Rob Font can strike, he can grapple, he can be patient or aggressive if he chooses to be, and Rob needs a win here, so I think he's going to try to play it smart and be a bit more tactical. But I think we're going to see Adrian Yanez prove that he's ready for this level of competition. I think Yanez has shown improvement with each fight that he's had, and I think we've seen him get better in every aspect since coming to the UFC, and I think he's become capable of holding his own with the upper class of the UFC bantamweight division. So I'll be taking Adrian Yanez in this one. Now for the co-main event, we've got Gilbert Burns against Jorge Masvidal. Now Masvidal is ranked number 11 in the welterweight division. He's a veteran with a record of 35-16, but he's lost his last 3 fights. However, it was to former champion Kamaru Usman twice and then to Colby Covington, so no shame there. Obviously, he's very well known for having the record for the fastest knockout in UFC history. He's got knockout power from start to finish of the fight, no matter how long he goes. He definitely prefers to stand, but he's been training hard and getting ready for the grappling that Gilbert can bring to this fight if he chooses to go that route against Masvidal. But now looking at Gilbert Burns, he's got a record of 21-5. He's won his last fight against Neil Magny by submission. Burns is going to be an inch shorter than Masvidal and a 3-inch reach disadvantage. He's extremely well-rounded and will have the advantage should this fight go to the ground, but just like Masvidal, Gilbert also has knockout power from start to finish of the fight. And I think Burns is going to approach this fight similar to how he fought Stephen Thompson and Neil Magny. I think he'll be looking for takedowns and submissions, and I think if he can't get a submission, he'll probably just look to out-grapple and outwork Masvidal on the ground in this fight. Now, Masvidal has said that he's been working really hard to improve the grappling and prepare for the wrestling pressure that Gilbert brings to his fights, and hopefully he'll be able to avoid the takedowns and keep the fight on the feet because that's where he's going to have his best chances to win this fight. I think this fight is going to be very exciting. I think Masvidal is going to be able to make this fight a little scrappy and add a couple wild cards to this fight. And I will be rooting for George Masvidal, but unfortunately I feel like Gilbert's going to come out of this one with the win. So I'm going to take Gilbert Burns in this fight. And finally, for the main event, Alex Pereira against Israel Adesanya. This is going to be the 4th time that these two have fought. They fought twice over in Glory Kickboxing, and Pereira won the first time by controversial split decision. The second time that these two fought, he caught Izzy with a big hook and knocked him out in the last round of their fight. And as we all saw 5 months ago, Pereira managed to catch Izzy again in the last round of their title fight when they fought for the 3rd time. So now we're here for a 4th time, and looking at Izzy first, these two are very similar, both standing at 6'4". Izzy's going to have a 1-inch reach advantage. He's 23-2, coming off of a loss to Pereira in his last fight. We all know Izzy. He's very technical, very patient. He's got the power, and he's got the ability to beat anybody in the middleweight division on any given night. He's got a lot of kickboxing experience, just like Pereira. He's a former Glory Kickboxing champion. And in his time here in the UFC, he's beaten almost everybody that he's fought, and he's proven that he's one of the greatest middleweights of all time with 5 title defenses against very tough opponents, reigning as the champion for 3 years from 2019 to 2022. But his opponent, Alex Pereira, simply seems to have Izzy's number, beating him 3 times prior to this fight. He's 2 years older than Izzy. He only has an MMA record of 7-1. He's undefeated inside of the UFC, having won his last 4 fights. He's a former Glory middleweight and light heavyweight champion. He's also very technical and can be patient, but is excellent at pushing the pace and carries such a heavy threat in his hands with massive knockout power. He, just like Izzy, has everything necessary to beat absolutely anybody on any given night. And like I've said before, these two are extremely similar, both in terms of their accomplishments and in the way that they fight. Yet Alex Pereira has won every single time that they've met. But despite the fact that Alex has won all 3 fights, the first fight was controversial because a lot of people thought that Izzy won that fight. In the second fight, a lot of people thought Izzy was winning the fight up until he got caught in the last round. And then in the last fight that we saw 5 months ago, Izzy would have easily won a decision over Alex Pereira had he made it to the judges' scorecards. But once again, Alex Pereira caught him in the last round of their fight. And looking at it from this point of view, it's really important to determine who's the better fighter, rather than hearing that Alex won all 3 times and just thinking that he's better by default because of that. Because this fight really is so much more complicated than that. In the last fight, we saw both fighters have success in their own ways. We saw Izzy find success in the grappling, which surprised a lot of people. We saw Alex find a key that I think will be used a lot more in this fight, which is the fact that he seems to be able to walk Izzy down anytime that he chooses to. As long as Izzy allows it, though. I did notice that Izzy backed up a lot in the early rounds of the last fight, but would have moments where he'd stop backing up and stand his ground, and he did find some success in exchanges where he did that. And I think that's the biggest change that Izzy needs to make in this 4th fight. He needs to stop giving Alex the ability to walk him down and back him up against the cage. That's exactly where he got caught in the last fight, and we very well could see a repeat of that if he doesn't make that change. And I think Izzy's going to be able to keep it from happening. If you look back, Izzy was winning every fight that they've had until he was caught in the last two, and the first one was a controversial split decision. I think this is the fight where Izzy finally puts it all together and finally comes out on top over Alex Pereira. So for this fight, I'm going to take Israel Adesanya. I just have the confidence that he's going to be able to make the changes necessary to win this fight, and I think he's going to do that this weekend. So I've got Izzy for the main event. And it looks like that's all I got for y'all. Hit like, subscribe, and all that.